Two boys were born into the same poverty. They had the same dreams, same opportunities. 20 years later, one became a billionaire, while the other couldn't even afford a decent meal. Daniel and Emmanuel grew up like brothers. They shared one small village and one big dream. Every evening, they promised each other one thing: one day, we'll make it. Although they shared the same dream, they didn't share the same mindset. While Daniel believed in hard work, Emmanuel believed success would somehow find him.
One afternoon, an old man from the village stopped to watch them. He smiled and said, "Your future will always follow the choices you make today."
Remember, my sons, true wealth grows slowly.
Daniel listened carefully to every word, but Emmanuel only laughed.
One day I'll be old man simply smiled and walked away. The very next morning, Daniel woke before sunrise to look for work in the next village. Emmanuel stayed in bed, convinced that tomorrow would always be another chance.
Daniel walked for hours under the hot sun. Every door brought the same answer. They said no vacancy, but he refused to give up. He believed one yes could change his life forever.
Back in the village, Emmanuel spent the day talking about the life he wanted. He dreamed of expensive cars and a big mansion, but dreams alone could not change his future.
As the sun began to set, Daniel knocked on one last gate. An elderly businessman looked at him for a moment and said, "Come inside."
The elderly man offered Daniel a simple job. The pay wasn't much, but Daniel accepted without hesitation. He knew every great journey begins with a single step.
That same evening, Daniel returned home with hope in his heart.
Emmanuel laughed when he heard about the small job. "That's too little for me." Before they went their separate ways. "One day will speak louder than our dreams." Emmanuel only smiled, that those words would change both their lives forever.
Daniel had become the first person to arrive at work and the last to leave. While others complained about hard work, he treated every day like another chance to grow. No task was too small for Daniel. While others waited to be told what to do, he always looked for ways to be useful. His dedication never went unnoticed. Weeks turned into months. Daniel never stopped giving his best. He wasn't working just for a salary. He was working to become a better man. One evening, after everyone had gone home, Daniel stayed behind to finish cleaning the warehouse. As he swept the floor, he had no idea someone was quietly watching from the shadows. As Daniel prepared to leave, the elderly businessman called his name. "I have been watching you for months. Not once have you complained, even when no one was looking." The elderly businessman smiled and said, "Hard work can open doors that money cannot." Then he handed Daniel a small envelope. Daniel had no idea that what was inside would change his future. With trembling hands, Daniel slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a letter that left him speechless. It wasn't just a reward, it was an opportunity.
The letter offered Daniel a fully sponsored professional training program. Learn everything you can. Knowledge is the one investment no one can ever take from you.
Daniel stepped out with tears in his eyes. He felt his hard work was paying off. "Thank you, God. I won't waste this opportunity." That night, Daniel shared the good news with his mother. She held the letter tightly and burst into tears.
Your father would have been so proud of you.
His mother gently placed her hands on his head and prayed.
May your hard work open doors no man can shut.
Daniel closed his eyes. That prayer stayed with him for the rest of his life. The next morning, Daniel would begin his training with hope. Emmanuel was still waiting for success to come. Neither of them knew that the choices they made next would shape their future. The next morning, Daniel reported for his first day of training. He wasn't the smartest in the room, but he was determined to learn more than anyone else. Let us begin with the basics.
While others waited for the lessons to end, Daniel stayed focused from beginning to finish. He wrote down every instruction, knowing that every lesson could shape his future.
When the instructor asked a difficult question, the classroom fell silent. Daniel wasn't sure of the answer, but he had the courage to raise his hand and try.
Daniel's answer wasn't perfect, but it showed he was willing to learn. The instructor smiled and said, "The person who keeps learning will always stay ahead." When the class ended, most of the trainees hurried home, but Daniel stayed asking questions and eager to understand more. The instructor quietly realized this young man was different. "Thank you so much, sir."
Later that afternoon, the trainees were divided into teams. Some complained about the difficult task. Daniel quietly stepped forward. He volunteered to lead his group. As the exercise continued, Daniel made sure everyone on his team understood their role. He didn't try to shine alone. He believed true success was helping others succeed too. As everyone celebrated, the instructor made an unexpected announcement. One trainee will be chosen for a special mentorship program. The entire room fell silent. The room filled with applause. Daniel walked forward with humility, not pride. As he accepted the opportunity, he remembered the words his mother prayed over him. The instructor looked around the room, then smiled. The trainee I have chosen has shown discipline, humility, and leadership. Every eye turned toward Daniel.
As Daniel walked out of the training center, he had no idea that another opportunity was already waiting for him. Meanwhile, Emmanuel was still dreaming about success instead of working for it. 3 years later, Daniel was no longer the young man who searched for opportunities. Now, opportunities were beginning to search for him. But he had not forgotten where he came from.
Success had changed Daniel's life, but it never changed his heart. He greeted everyone with respect because he remembered what it felt like to be overlooked. Every decision Daniel made was guided by the lessons he learned through hardship. He didn't chase quick success anymore. He focused on building something that would last. After the meeting, Daniel noticed a young applicant sitting alone in the reception area. The nervous look on the young man's face reminded him of himself, the day he knocked on one last gate and refused to give up.
Daniel sat beside the young man instead of walking past him.
"Why do you look so worried?"
The young applicant took a deep breath and began to share his story.
The young man confessed, "I've been rejected everywhere I go. I'm beginning to think my dreams will never come true." Daniel smiled, because he had once felt the same way.
I was once in your position. The difference wasn't luck. I simply refused to give up.
Daniel reached into his briefcase and handed the young man his business card. "Come and see me tomorrow morning, not because I pity you, but because I see your determination."
Before leaving, the young man asked one final question. What kept you going when everything seemed impossible? Daniel paused for a moment before answering.
Daniel smiled and replied, "I stopped wishing for a better life and started fighting for one. That's when everything changed." The young man walked away with a new mindset, not because someone gave him success, but because someone reminded him that success must be earned. Daniel watched.
As Daniel turned to return to his office, his phone suddenly rang. The voice on the other end made him stop in his tracks. It was someone from his village, calling about Emmanuel.
The very next morning, Daniel returned to the village where everything began. The roads looked the same, but the lives of the two friends had changed completely.
As Daniel walked through the village, he noticed a familiar face sitting quietly beneath an old mango tree. It was Emmanuel. The dreams they once shared had taken them to very different places.
For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Years of memories filled the silence. Then Daniel smiled first and walked toward his old friend.
Emmanuel lowered his head.
"I spent years waiting for life to change," he admitted. "While you were fighting for your future, I was only wishing for mine." Your story doesn't end here. As long as you're alive, you can still choose to fight for a better tomorrow.
Daniel reached into his briefcase, not to give Emmanuel money, but to offer him something far more valuable, a chance to work, learn, and rebuild his life. Emmanuel held the folder tightly. For the first time in years, he wasn't waiting for a miracle. He was ready to work for a better future. Months later, Emmanuel kept his promise. He worked harder than he ever had before. Slowly, his life began to change. One afternoon, Daniel walked through the warehouse without saying a word. He wasn't there to inspect Emmanuel. He was there to see if his friend had truly changed. Daniel smiled and quietly said, "Now you've understood the secret." Emmanuel nodded and replied, "I finally learned that life rewards those who are willing to fight for their future." Years later, their story became an inspiration across the village. People no longer remembered them as two boys with big dreams. They remembered them as two men who chose hard work over excuses. Success doesn't belong to those who only wish for it. It belongs to those who wake up every day and work for it. Remember, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you fight for.